You're tuned to Off the Ball, the most petty and ill-informed sports programme on radio, VAR, and the one thing you would punt from Scottish football. Your epic journey and Hibs versus Hearts.
Can y'all hear that? Can y'all hear that? Well, clap your hands then. Come on, clap your hands. Come on, clap your hands. Put your hands together and clap your. Now everybody say booster. Come on, say booster. Booster. Everybody, come on. Booster. Say booster. Call him now. Call him. Booster. Everybody, come on. Booster. Say what? Wait a minute now.
Yes, indeed, Thomas. Good show this weekend. Professor Gordon Mackay is with us in the first part of the show, and then the much-published author David Ross with us in the second part of the show. So lots to be getting on with, but you've got a theory that actually there are things you would like to get rid of in the glorious game.
Because I think it's a no-brainer now, particularly after a couple of incidents this week. You'd only need to ask Dundee United or Celtic fans about VAR. I think in general terms, everyone who does want to punt it. The SFA panel came out and said that Sam Dalby's goal should have stood. Maeda's goal should have stood. And you think there's too many incidents like this now. Just get rid of it. And you know what, Stuart? I've gone full circle in this. And the point I used to always make, and I'm going to be very, very fair here, the point I always used to make is that, unless you have referees in your country using VAR, they won't get the gigs at UEFA level.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. I think we're going through a bit of a dip now in terms of the standard of refereeing. Much in the same way, we're definitely going through a dip the standard of playing, and fans are being fleeced on a weekly basis. So I don't think that's as much an issue now. We don't have the Willie Youngs, the Brian McGinleys, the Kenny Clarks, the Bobby Maddens. They're not going to catch the eye of UEFA to get the big games anyway. So
my theory was that there used to be, and I understand why this came about, because when it was offered to us, it was offered as it would bring greater clarity to the game.
And it's clearly no happening.
It's no happening.
There are more arguments and debates than ever. And as we all said at the time, it was never going to wipe out every debate.
No.
And we thought, well, it'll be quite good. It'll be a different kind of debate now. But we're getting bored with it. And let's be brutally honest, that's why our first talking point is VAR and one thing you would punt. Because we don't want to dwell in VAR. And I think it is now a no-brainer. The other thing I'd say to you, Stuart, is that, you know, it is even if you'd have look at the game last night, Partick Thistle against Livingston, I think everybody would have to agree it was a pretty poor game, right? It would have been 100 times worse to watch it with VAR. The bottom line being that we can enjoy the championship games, and you sometimes watch them without even realising, maybe until the end of it, you think, oh, there was no VAR in that game. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it. Maybe that's why it flew by. Wasn't it a classic last night, of course? Another thing I would say, it's Armed Forces Day at Ibrox today. Motherwell the visitors. To make that whole thing really, really tangible and really worthwhile, I would suggest that they point the cannons at the VAR cameras today and just blow them up, and let's make a start getting rid of VAR at Ibrox today.
What regiments will new management team in?
I don't know who will be there today, but what I do know is that Michael Wimmer will be there fresh from a midweek victory against Dundee, when Rangers at one point were really, really struggling, 2-0 down at Rugby Park after 20-odd minutes. But see, that note as well,
on Armed Forces Day, you're supporting the German.
We've had our say. It's been such a busy week since we were last on air. You've had the whole kind of staunch coaching team have gone in at Rangers. And what I must say, I think it'd be churlish of us, because I spent the first 3 days of these guys being appointed, Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds and Alan McGregor, having a right bit of fun with it on my Instagram and all the rest of it, but I think it's only fair to say that, you know, fair play to these guys in many respects. Neil McCann, we know that he's got a job for life at the BBC. He's got the old revolving door. So if it doesn't work out for him, he'll be back in here, right? That's happened about 15 times, I think, in his career. But Billy is a football guy through and through. He wants to put his head above the parapet, you know.
Yeah.
Neil McCann, Neil could have sat forever. He is one of the better pundits, you know.
Yep.
Let's have no doubts about that. It'd be an easy option for him just to say, I'm not getting near that. I'm sitting on the couch, you know what I mean? And to be fair to Barry Ferguson, see, and we've done all the jokes about Barry Ferguson, right? Get into the library and asking for a fish sup on a boat iron brew. And Barry, this is a library. Oh, a fish sup on a boat iron brew, right? We've done all the jokes very unfairly. What I must say, I'm going to fair play to Barry Ferguson because he got the job done the other night, right? And they were 2-0 down. He did have to take a player off within 20 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
But they ended up scoring 4 away from home with a Kilmarnock team that's no the worst in their
No,
history,
they are
you know?
not. No.
And, you know,
And did he drive home in the orange pickup
the orange pickup truck was a classic. It's not his, of course. It'll be his wife's.
Aye.
You know, certainly with the paperwork, I'm imagining. But what I thought was decent as well, for everybody that's ganging up on him and saying, look at his record at Kelty Hearts and look at his record at Alloa. I think you would tend to find that even if Pep Guardiola had been at the clubs, the record might not look that great. You know, I think it's all about levels.
So I know you like your arithmetic here.
Yes.
Were there more brown brogues on show?
I'll tell you what.
Sports scene slippers.
If you it's tipped it. If you'd been a door-to-door brown brogue salesman in Lark Hall this week, you wouldn't even be listening to the show. You'd be out in Barbados now, spending some of the proceeds. I mean, they have gone for it. It was your classic heart ruling. It seemed like your classic heart ruling the head situation, and we've spoken about that before, Stuart, right? And I think Motherwell fans will correct me if I'm wrong. We dipped into it for, I think it was only a game or two, where we suddenly had, I think it was like the dream team. I think we had John Philbin, Jim Griffin, and Miodrag Krivokapic, who found themselves in charge of the team for a couple of weeks. And I think they did all right. But that was the kind of fans immediately think, and they'll be thinking about that with Barry Ferguson and the rest of the boys. Oh, you know, if they get the results, though, you know. And I'll tell you what, the way it's been, you know, stranger things have happened than Rangers with this coaching team getting past Fenerbahce in the Europa League.
Now,
you know, stranger things have happened.
So what would you punt?
Eh?
Beyond
Oh,
that.
what would I punt? Right, this is easy. So we're saying, whether you, I mean, everybody's gone for VR to get punted now, but we're bored talking about it. It's surely a gimme. But we're asking you, so if there's one thing that you could punt, if we take it that VR is staying, this is going to be fascinating. What I would punt, Stuart, is the strict regulatory rules involving televised football.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, televised football versus live football. The do's and the don'ts take you back to the time, and I think this is factually correct, when an Albion Rovers versus East Stirlingshire game was not allowed to be played one night midweek because Real Madrid were on the telly in the Champions League, right? We made all these silly rules for way back. I just think now, coverage of football is absolutely wall to wall, and it doesn't even just need to be on what you would call console telly. We know, of course, you've got satellite telly, and we know that you could pop into any pub in the land now, let's be honest, and see any game almost at any time of the day. And then folk as well have these magical devices called Fire Sticks, you know. So I would get rid of the whole, I would just wipe out any kind of rules about you can't show that game because it's still the first round of that, and you can only show it in the second. No, you can't have that game at that time on a Sunday because something else. You know, just bin the lot of it and allow folk to make their choice. You know,
Scottish schools under 18 team 6, England 2.
Oh.
Now, can you watch it anywhere?
Now that's a thing because back in the day, Paul Rideout scoring the 40
That was
yarders
actually
against
on
us.
broadcast telly.
That was on ITV.
Yeah.
That was I think that was all Brian Moore doing the commentary that day, and that was a game that certainly boys of my generation. You couldn't wait to go up the park to play after watching that game. Was that 5-4 or something?
Aye, Scotland won it as well, doing it
But
Wembley.
they gubbed them again the day. Are you barring anything there? Well, you'll agree with me about the telly then. You should just been able to show that game at any time.
Absolutely. If I'd known that game was on, I'd have watched it.
Controversial one, but if Davy Martindale was tuned in, and this was kind of refreshing in that it's not the sort of thing you normally hear, but after the game last night, and Firhill, to be fair, was a bit like a ploughed field, and it's maybe something for Brian Graham to address. I'm assuming he's also the groundsman just now.
I think he is. Big Graham.
Must be the only job that he's no got there. But Davy Martindale came out and he said, I'm not blaming Partick Thistle. There's other things to take into account, even in almost global terms, the height of the pitch, the height of the stadium, and what that means with the weather and all the rest of it. So he wasn't put a portion in blame, but it was a great stout defence of AstroTurf.
I like to hear that.
And you never ever hear that. So I'm going to side with him just for the sake of argument today and say I would also punt grass pitches. They're nothing but trouble. We're going to get more, I think, more and more rain as global warming, etc., etc.
Yeah. And it's no good for St.
Get rid of the
Johnstone.
grass pitches.
We're in a basin basically at the bottom of a hill in Perth, and it gets sodden around this time in spring when the rain starts more heavily. Our pitch, you can't do anything with it. It's
And I'll tell you as well, I would ban as well. Another thing to punt, the very notion of banning away fans from getting into your stadium.
Yeah.
And this was, of course, the big story, one of the big stories this week. The fact that the away fans ban has been lifted as far as Rangers and Celtic go.
Yeah,
right.
Self-imposed. They imposed it.
Yeah, I know
themselves.
and that just should not be allowed. The SFA, the Scottish League, whatever, they've got to move in now and say, right, but that's the end of it.
I would. One of the things I'd widen that story out. I think that tickets for matches should be available up to an hour before kick-off.
Yeah.
Forget all this buying it 2 days in advance. And
the great, you know what, we've mentioned this from time to time in recent months, but I think you hit the nail on the head this morning when we were sitting in the canteen and you said, can you imagine the same setup at a cinema? You arrive at, you say you've got a wee Tuesday afternoon to yourself.
Yeah.
You think, there's a picture that's on that I fancied seeing. I'll go away and see it today. So you get in there, there's like 3 folk, tops, who would be sitting in the cinema, and you can't get a ticket over the counter because you hadn't pre-ordered it or you hadn't got it by email the previous day. In other words, you couldn't just pay cash at the door. So I think they've got to be...
No, you've got to pick it up for a cinema base in Ayr.
And the thing is, they could just work it, as you say, Stuart, in percentages.
Yeah.
And you say, right, the bottom line is, and if you looked at the fixtures today, any week at all, and I'll use main team for us in terms of no gloating about us, and I know we've not got a huge support, but, Motherwell at home to Ross County, Motherwell at home to St Johnstone, St Mirren, Motherwell at home to MD, apart from Celtic and Rangers, you could make this work, you know what I mean? But, stop it. Allow fans to come up. Oh, dearie me. That's the first.
You know the thing about it, Tam, is they forget that there are people, maybe somebody up with a long weekend for a Kent, and he thinks,
there's a game
match,
on.
I'll go.
And it could be one of these guys. Imagine a scenario: a guy's coming up from Kent because his wife is wanting to see her sister that she hasn't seen for 17 years. As it turns out, he doesn't like her sister.
Aye.
It turns out he maybe had an affair with his sister many years ago.
This is getting
and he's
complicated.
kept his distance, right?
Aye.
And he thinks, right, you know what? You go and see your sister. There's a game on. And you know me, I love my football. There's a game on at Easter Road today. I'll go to that. And he trots along. It's Hibs against Motherwell. He thinks, so we no bother getting a ticket for that. No, sorry, sir. You need to go back and spend the afternoon with the sister-in-law. It's ridiculous. So, what is the one thing that you would punt? VAR. And increasingly, I'm saying whether we love it or loathe it, everybody just loathes it now. But VAR, but it is here to stay, right? We've got to admit that. But if you were allowed to punt one thing,
are you a fan of 3 strips per season?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a controversial answer, and I'll tell you why. Two reasons. One, I'm at the age, this is a thing we bring up now, I'm at an age where you start looking more at the fiscal side of your club.
Yeah.
Right, know what I mean? Rather than
do,
just
yeah, I
results
do.
and stuff like that. So if it brings in a wee bit
Extra
more
coinage.
commercial dosh, and even that contractual thing where you have to wear the third strip, you know, twice a season, four times a season. As long as you're getting money for that, great. And then the other reason, Stuart, that I would say, it's handy maybe having that third strip. Remember, I told you Jane Lewis gave us that great story last week for the Rugby World.
Yes, about colour blindness.
Ireland and Wales.
Yeah.
And if they'd played in their natural colours, it would have been
Hard
really difficult for the colour blind community like myself. And as I said to you, and we ran out of time, we were talking about this, if it's two what I would call it dark colours. The example I use, imagine Aberdeen at home to Dundee,
Yeah.
and they're both wearing their traditional jerseys, and neither of them have hoops or stripes. So it's two dark jerseys, right? Kind of red and dark blue, yeah? Now that, I genuinely struggle with that.
Yeah.
And particularly if it was a pacey game. So I would like them to have that third strip as an option.
alternative.
That means that all sorts of combos. They could make it work so that the two teams would never clash for the colour-blind community.
But you know, there was a game earlier this season, I think it might have been St Mirren Kilmarnock, where they were both wearing stripes.
Oh.
And I found it really, really hard to
I'll tell you what as well, I think with the stripes too, I think it might have been Wally Miller. If he's tuned in and I've got this wrong, he can drop us a text and correct me. I think Wally was saying that I think the stripes were to blame, or maybe it was just the size of the lettering, but
Yeah.
Wally was struggling with a couple of names
Aye.
of the Kelly players last week. I think it was just last week. And so again, and that's not even a colour blindness issue, but yeah, so I'd keep them for that. But listen, what is it you would punt? And we're also talking, Stuart, this is like a wee follow-up story from a guest that we done about a year ago. We're going to be joined by Professor Gordon Mackay, who is an ex-professional footballer. He was actually at Rangers in the kind of Souness stroke Walter Smith era. He is a surgeon, Professor Gordon Mackay, and he's been part and parcel of a film that's coming out at the Glasgow Film Festival called Make It to Munich.
Yeah.
Make It to Munich. And the reason for that being, the gentleman who did make it to Munich, he was like our bionic man, I think we dubbed him.
Correct, yeah.
We had the gentleman on the show about a year ago who'd been involved in a horrendous road accident in America.
Yeah.
And basically, Professor Gordon Mackay was his Oscar Goldman for the $6 million fans out there. He did rebuild him, and they did a cycle ride to Munich for the Euros last summer.
Apparently, it's a neat variation on a new kneecap. But it gives you greater flexibility. We'll get Gordon
I'm sure the surgeon will explain it much better than us, so we're going to have him in. But he has done.
And
He
do you think
cycled
he
it as
played
well.
more for Rangers than Gordon Ramsay?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I would imagine so, yes. In fact, I must be honest, I'm no lie to Gordon, but I couldn't recall the names, so
No,
I'm thinking
no.
fringes maybe, maybe a couple of appearances maybe in the squad, or maybe even on the bench, but we'll ask. But Professor Gordon Mackay will be joining us, so we're asking you, him and his crew, cameraman and the bionic boy, they cycled to Munich last year, and he'll tell us all
And
story
it's
about
now
that.
a movie, so
Never
that'll be
movie,
interesting.
but we want to know your epic journey.
Yes.
There you go. Now, I'm quite proud of the fact, and I'll skim over this because I'd certainly mentioned the walking part of it before.
Yeah.
But 2 years in succession, Stuart, I did the West Highland Way. Now, the first time was walking it in the traditional manner from Mulgai to Fort William, 110 miles, I think it is. And I did that. I'll tell you what as well. It was in the back, inspired as my dad and my dad's pal Jim Martin for his work were. Inspired by, and he's still very much with us, and he'll be in his 90s now, a legendary BBC figure, Jimmy McGregor.
Yeah, I remember
And
him,
if you
yeah.
recall, Jimmy McGregor
Love
in
him.
the early to mid-80s had done a cracking wee series for the BBC about him walking the West Highland Way.
Yeah.
And it was great, and it really caught the imagination. It certainly did with my dad. and before you know it, we were doing the West Highland Way. And what I'd like to say as well, as much as I had bought a pair of rugged shoes that I thought were going to do the bizzle for a proper hike, the West Highland Way, I was all blisters and everything within
Aye.
the first leg of the walk, and I changed into, Stuart, an old pair of gutties that I'd been
Excellent.
kicking about the streets in for years, and I did it shooty in. So
Yeah.
the next time you're walking by one of these, you know,
Don't
these,
get new boots.
aye, these shops that sell tents and cagoules, and you see these boots costing £400, get yourself a pair of Adidas Kick. They do
Yeah.
the same trick, you know. But I
Okay,
did that, and then
so, Robin Hall and...
Jimmy McGregor.
Correct. Now, they were on the Tonight programme as the musical interlude.
That's right.
Once a week. Name the calypso singer that was often on the same slot.
Lance Percival.
No,
No, was it a female?
it was a male.
Or male?
I'll
Right.
just leave it out.
I thought I would get. I was going to say Millicent Martin. She
No.
was on it, but
But-
she wasn't the. I know it's the tip of my tongue. Right? Who was the? It's one for the older listeners. Let's be honest. Who was the calypso singer? And that was on the. What was the show
The
actually
Tonight
called?
programme
Is that just what it was
with
called?
Cliff Mitchellmore, yeah.
Right.
It was like in the one show slot.
All right. Okay.
Sorry, I shouldn't be telling you about
Right.
slots.
Fair. I know exactly. You know, it's my stock in trade.
Yeah.
But there we go. But the.
But Robin Hall and Jimmy McGregor were the Scottish.
Aye, I can steer them on it as well.
Aye.
And I'm sure even one night they got away with singing Football Crazy, didn't they?
They did,
Yeah,
yes,
I'm
indeed.
Football Crazy, Football Mad. Anyhow, so what was your epic journey? We're going to be joined. We've got the whole story, the background story to refresh our memory about the bionic boy who we did have in the show a year ago from Professor Gordon Mackay, but he has cycled to Munich. What was your epic journey?
Yeah.
Right,
Now-
and this is near us, Stuart, just in case folk need a wee prod at us. This is near a folk.
Careful.
You're forever hearing about
Don't bring religion
the
into the
Great
show.
Wall of the Great Wall of China. I'm doing that a sponsored thing. You hear about up Kilimanjaro. Recently, whoever it would have been, probably the Sherpas and all their pals were reminding Westerners.
Don't dump their rubbish in
Clean
your
up
back
behind you.
garden.
Everest is so popular now. It's no, you don't just need
Wait.
Sir Edmund Hillary to go up it. That loads of folk are getting up, but they've left the place like a tip.
Yeah, and there's queues and everything. It's a different world. But
Now,
have
fascinating
you ever
subject.
heard of Dambula?
Dambula.
Yeah.
It sounds like a drink.
Yeah.
A liqueur, maybe, is it?
No, it's a place in central
Oh, is it?
Sri Lanka,
Right.
Not so far from Kandy,
Right.
And there too, the great relics of Buddhism are to be found,
All right.
including in Kandy, I think it is the tooth relic. The theory being that a tooth was left by the Buddha, and you go up to this monument, and there's a wee tooth lying there.
What do? Do you touch
You
it
just
for luck?
look at it, aye, and you touch it, and you're reverential towards it, but you have to climb hills and
Before you see it?
oh, aye, it's an
Is it
epic
just
journey.
a tooth?
Aye.
Not got a lot of
An
plaque
epic
or anything.
journey. It's just like a bairn would have the tooth fairy.
Right.
Aye, tooth fairy.
Shh. You were talking about Santa Claus next.
you
Tooth
know
Fairy's
what?
a magnificent woman.
Aye, but,
That's it.
aye, but the bairns that lose the tooth are wanting a tenner now, no two quid.
Oh, I know, it's getting incredible. But anyhow, there's a good old panto trick, panto joke that a lot of them do now. When they get if they get a couple of the kids up on stage, and I saw it was Liam Dolan, an old pal of mine. I saw him doing this at the Pavilion, and he was making out balloon animals, you know,
Yeah.
a couple of balloons to the wee guy he had on stage, but it was clearly he couldn't do it properly, you know. So whatever he shaped this balloon into, he said to the wee boy, "Here you go, it's a dog," you know. But he says, "But these are magic balloons." So he gave him one that hadn't been blown up, and he gave it to the wee guy. And then, whilst over the mic and looking to the grown-ups in the audience, and particularly the wee guy's parents, he said, "This is a magic balloon. See if you stick this under your pillow tonight, there'll be a £20 note there in the morning." And what heartless parent was
Would
ever
ever
not going
say,
to play
"I'm
along?
gonna
You
do
know what I
it."
mean? So anyway, right, but your epic journey. And the other thing,
For the second part of the show, particularly where we've got David Ross as our guest.
Aye, David Ross will be joining us. He is a Rangers fan. He's no stranger to the show. He's got his new book out called The Weekenders. So we can brush out a couple of things quickly. We're going to be talking about your weekend. What is your weekend? And me and Stuart are fascinated with this because our weekend, of course, for 30 years now, has kind of been dictated by the
The
show.
show.
So my weekend once just weeks before Off the Ball, my weekend was still a bit of leisurely morning telly. Saturday Superstore, it might even have been then. And then a good couple of rolls and sausage in the morning. Football Focus. St and Greaves, they would still have been on.
They would, yeah.
And then I would have headed out in a leisurely fashion up through Motherwell Town Centre to go to Fir Park and watch Motherwell.
Well, I was doing the Odeon in Perth, and they had the morning BB's special. They were the basically B movies linked together. So
Right,
it was often cowboys or pirates.
And then the highlight of your day would have been 3 o'clock in Saints at Muirton.
Straight up, we could walk
See?
up. Aye.
And the reason that, for the listeners, a lot of folk are set in their ways at the weekend. I'm just fascinated to know. And in terms of like the show, I've had a lot of folk very kindly telling me down through the years how they gauge kind of part of their Saturdays so that they can tune into the show. And a guy I even spoke to this week says that he chooses on a Saturday to run his wife to the, not far from here actually, it's a big Asda in Govan, and he says he runs her there on the Saturday, and he says, Tam, I've got it down to almost the minute. He says, when I drop her off at Asda, right, it's like bang on noon. And then she'll happily away into us. Take your time, hen. Take your time, bit in you want. And she'll away in there, and he'll put the show on. He'll be listening to now. So hello to Jim. Can't mind your second name, Jim, but only met you this week. And he says that then when he sees her coming out, can sometimes be a good an hour and a half into the show, so it's a good listen in the car. But when he sees her emerging with the trolley, yes, like the any decent husband, he'll leap out the car and pack the stuff up into the motor.
So he's not allowed to listen to the radio.
Oh, aye, but there's a wee 5-minute bit that he'll miss, and then he says to me, he then gets the rest of the show on the drive home.
Yeah.
It's no far home, but it's a Saturday, lot of traffic, even getting out of the car park. So he's got it down to a fine art. But tell us, are you one of these people who, no matter what, you always, I don't know, water your flowers on a Saturday? Have you got a strict regime?
Or are you one of these families that emigrated to Australia because you couldn't bear off the ball?
Aye, exactly. Aye, before you thought well, not be able to hear that out there. Free internet. But aye, so your weekend, because Davy Ross will be joining us in the second half of the show. His new book is just called The Weekenders. And another thing we want you to think about, and I had that again this, and I think it's tiresome. Come on. And it goes back to the Rangers story where, because I was enjoying a bit of fun on my phone with all the Barry Ferguson stuff, right? The picture, somebody had sent me a great picture just and we've seen them on now this week, Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds and Alan McGregor, and I just caption it, says, who needs the A team when you've got the EBT team, right? It was wee jokes like that, right? Harmless stuff, right? Nothing in it at all. But after about 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, right, then lo and behold, and I quote, I got a DM for somebody saying, you must be a Celtic fan, you wee fat helmet. Right, so there you go. Now, if it had been jokes this week about the other side, I'd have been accused of, But guys, listen, for anybody else that wants to maintain that, I've done some jobby covering up who I really support. 45 years now I've been paying for these season tickets at Motherwell just to cover my backside, you know. But where we're getting a talking point out of this, when it comes to who do you really support, what if it was at the other end of the M8? What if it was Edinburgh rather than Glasgow? And what we want to know, who do you really support?
Come on, the cabbage.
When it boils down to Hibs and Hearts, right? Now, first up, for non-Hibs, non-Hearts supporters, we'd like you to have an answer at that. If it's Hibs v Hearts as it is tomorrow, who in your heart, in your mind, who are you secretly cheering for? It might be because you got a great player back in the day from Hibs or Hearts, and you'll always be thankful to that club. It could be, what other reason, Stuart?
Well, it could be to do that you've maybe had your fill of heart failures this year.
Well, aye, like yourself, yes.
Aye.
It could be anything like that. It could be that you got a great result against one of the teams, and it might even be Hibs or Hearts that did you a favour.
I met Jim O'Rourke in Rose Street the week he signed for St Johnstone.
Right,
The great Hibernian striker Jim O'Rourke,
Right.
who also features in the greatest Scottish football joke of all time.
Yes, give us a...
Well, it's quite a long one. But basically, it's the story of a Scottish journalist with a burr who was ringing his copy in, and it was the days when they were bringing the cutbacks, so he was having to ring down to England to give a midweek game, and he says, near the final whistle, Jim O'Rourke scored for Hibernian. And the woman on the other end says, sorry, Jock, what was his name again? He said, Jim O'Rourke. And she said, no, just slowly, Jim O'Rourke. And the woman says, could you just spell that? And he went, O''R''O''K''E. And the woman says, I'm struggling with this. And the boy just says, oh, just make it Pat Stanton.
No, that's one of my favourites. I love that story.
Good gag.
So listen, Hibs or Hearts, for whatever reason, think of your club, and I'd need to say as well, just the way that. The way that Hearts looked after Motherwell when we lost Phil O'Donnell, and folk have heard me talking about this. They were magnificent. It was our first game back, Scottish Cup tie at Tynecastle, and so I must say I've maybe sided with Hearts ever since then. They were just so good to Motherwell in our hour of need, and it's caused me a bit of grief for Hibs fans saying, you're Motherwell, man, you're nothing but a big fat Jambo,
Aye.
And as I always say, if I had been anything other than an impoverished student who'd been at Napier College for 3 weeks at the time of hands-off Hibs, and they were getting helped out by the Proclaimers and everything when they were battling Wallace Mercer, I would have happily done a gig or two with Hibs.
Was there
but
no an
it wasn't
incident
possible.
about Wallace Mercer's Gearton?
Wallace Mercer's Gearton?
I think there was an incident where either somebody was seen in the environs of his garden.
Wait, a well-known person?
Aye, somebody that was... Would have put
you
it
know
in the
what? That
papers.
rings a bell.
Yeah.
Right, who can tell us that story? Who was caught? Was it maybe an out-and-out, Ronnie Corbett? Who was it? Was it an out-and-out irate Jambo?
I think
who
it was
you
a hippie.
believe- And it was, they were trying to it was like a Pew Dallas tan in the Windies kind of thing.
I
or
think
something.
it was that kind of...
But you think that you claim it the hippie you think was like a well-known hippie?
well known to make the story a tabloid story.
Right, okay. Right, well, that is the 4 talking points. VAR. Certainly, we're allowing it today in the back of the Dundee United and Celtic incidents, and the SFA has come out and said both effectively were wrong. We are thinking, right, time to chuck it. I'm up for binning it now, and I used to love it. But it's here to stay. But what is the one thing that you would punt?
A game of football should last 90 minutes, no 102 minutes.
Aye. One thing you would punt in Scottish football. What was your epic journey? Professor Gordon Mackay is going to tell us all about the cycle run to Munich. So what was your epic journey on foot, on bike, anything at all, in your car? Hibs against Hearts. If it boils down to it ahead of tomorrow's game, who do you really support and why? Hibs or Hearts? For the eyes of an Arbroath fan, an Aberdeen fan, a Threave Rovers fan, who is it out of those two you would side for and why? And your weekend. David Ross will be joining us second half of the show. That's his new book, The Weekenders. We want to know, what is your weekend? Has your weekends changed over the years? Or is there things that you do every single weekend and you've done them since the year dot? Professor Gordon Mackay is, of course, a surgeon. So we're going to make the team of the week the Operating Theatre 11.
Oh, wow.
This will be good. I can't imagine we've ever done this before. It sounds fresh. The Operating Theatre 11. And the ones we had this morning were Razor Ruddock. We had Rudy Scalpel, which I liked. And we had, and he was talked about... been snubbed this week as well for the Rangers gig. Swab Malcolm.
Aye.
Swab Malcolm. Pictures this week, him in the old ice cream van when he was saying that,
Correct.
maybe been the interim Rangers catering manager, but alas, no. But so that's stacks to talk about anything else that takes your fancy, 80295 in a text. You can email off the ball at bbc.co.uk.
Now, I don't know if they're listening to the show, but they have done before, and that is Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, the parents of Gwion Edwards, the one-time St Johnstone Welsh footballer, and a happy St David's Day to all our Welsh listeners.
It would be remiss of us, yeah. Happy St David's Day. And who's the Welsh person? Let's get them in. Who's the Welsh person? Maybe somebody at your club, maybe a showbiz person, maybe a pal. Who's the Welsh person that you would like to wish